Hey everybody, one more time in our survey of Exodus through Deuteronomy, could I invite you to join me? Old Testament book of Deuteronomy chapter 28. All quarter long, we've been exploring, you shall be my people. How God raised up a man named Moses to lead the children of Israel who had been slaves for about 400 years out of Egypt, back to the land of Canaan that God had promised to eventually give to Abraham, to his son Isaac, to his grandson Jacob, ultimately to their descendants. Those men, really, they lived as pilgrims, right? In tents, moving about. But now their descendants are finally about to get that land that was promised centuries before. We've learned throughout this quarter how God makes these people a nation. He gives them promises, but also expectations, commandments, a law whereby they can be a kingdom, his kingdom, and a light in the world. At the heart of all of that is his covenant. What's a covenant? It's a relationship based on promises. This is what you can expect from me. This is what I expect of you. That's what the children of Israel entered into with God at the foot of Mount Sinai. They heard God's promises and they said, all that the Lord has said we will do. They entered into a covenant, a relationship based on promises. And now, using Deuteronomy chapter 28 and a couple of other references, we want to listen to Moses' very last words, how he reminds them of this covenant. Let's listen in. Deuteronomy 28 verse 1. Moses says, "And if you faithfully obey the voice of Yahweh your God, being careful to do all his commandments that I command you today, the Lord your God will set you high above all the nations of the earth, and all these blessings shall come upon you and overtake you." If. That's a really big word here. If you obey the voice of the Lord your God. Blessed shall you be in the city, and blessed shall you be in the field. Blessed shall be the fruit of your womb, and the fruit of your ground, and the fruit of your cattle, the increase of your herds, and the young of your flock. Blessed shall be your basket and your kneading bowl. Blessed shall you be when you come in, and blessed shall you be when you go out. That all sounds great, right? Blessing all around. Well, what if the children of Israel aren't faithful to their covenant, this relationship based on promises with God? Will that be a big deal? Skip down to verse 15. Here's that big word again. If. But if you will not obey the voice of the Lord your God, or be careful to do all his commandments and his statutes that I command you today, then all these curses shall come upon you and overtake you. Cursed shall you be in the city, and cursed you be in the field. Cursed shall be your basket and your kneading bowl. Cursed shall be the fruit of your womb and the fruit of your ground, the increase of your herds and the young of your flock. Cursed shall you be when you come in, and cursed shall you be when you go out. You see, this was a covenant, a relationship based on promises. And you and I know enough about God to know God was going to be faithful to his side of the covenant. God is always faithful. The people are being warned. And you might have to turn a page or two over to Deuteronomy chapter 30. Listen, Moses puts this in the simplest terms possible. Deuteronomy chapter 30 and verse 11, he says, "This commandment that I command you today is not too hard for you, neither is it far off. It is not in heaven that you should say, 'Who will ascend to heaven for us and bring it to us that we may hear it and do it?' Neither is it beyond the sea that you should say, 'Who will go over the sea for us and bring it to us that we may hear it and do it?' But the word of this covenant is very near you. It is in your mouth and in your heart so that you can do it." See, listen to how straightforward and easy to understand this is. I have set before you today life and good, death and evil. Israel has a choice to make. Here's our big word again. If you obey the commandments of the Lord your God that I command you today, by loving the Lord your God, by walking in his ways and by keeping his commandments and his statutes and his rules, then you shall live and multiply, and the Lord your God will bless you in the land that you are entering to take possession of it. Listen, if you want to understand why, what happens throughout the rest of the Old Testament really does happen, it goes back to these last words of Moses. Verse 17, "But if your heart turns away and you will not hear, but are drawn away to worship other gods and serve them, I declare to you today that you shall surely perish. You shall not live long in the land that you are going over the Jordan to enter and possess." Moses says, "I call heaven and earth to witness against you today that I have set before you life and death, blessing and curse. Therefore, choose life, that you and your offspring may live, loving the Lord your God, obeying his voice and holding fast to him. For he is your life and length of days, that you may dwell in the land that the Lord swore to your fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to give them." Some of Moses' last words, emphasizing to the children of Israel, now it is up to you. Let's end a few pages later in Deuteronomy chapter 34. Last chapter of Deuteronomy. Our narrator tells us that Moses went up from the plains of Moab to Mount Nebo to the top of Pisgah, which is opposite Jericho. Moses is all the way up here, but he's not on the side of Canaan. He's on the other side of the Jordan River, over here on a really high mountain named Mount Nebo. And the Lord showed him, looking over the Jordan River, all the land, Gilead as far as Dan, all Naphtali, the land of Ephraim and Manasseh, all the land of Judah as far as the western sea, the Negeb and the plain, that is the valley of Jericho, the city of palm trees, as far as Zoar. And the Lord said to him, "This is the land of which I swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. I will give it to your offspring. I have let you see it, Moses, with your eyes, but you shall not go over there." So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab, according to the word of the Lord. And he buried him in the valley in the land of Moab, opposite Beth Peor. But no one knows the place of his burial to this day. Moses was 120 years old when he died. His eye was undimmed, his vigor unabated. The people of Israel wept for Moses in the plains of Moab 30 days. Then the days of weeping and mourning for Moses were ended, and Joshua the son of Nun was full of the spirit of wisdom, for Moses had laid his hands on him. So the people of Israel obeyed him and did as the Lord had commanded Moses. And there has not arisen a prophet since in Israel like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face. None like him for all the signs and the wonders that the Lord sent him to do in the land of Egypt, to Pharaoh and to all his servants and to all his land, and for all the mighty power and all the great deeds of terror that Moses did in the sight of all Israel. That's how it ends. The recorded life of Moses. It ends with some reminders, some encouragements, some strong warnings that you and I can learn from even today. Let's talk about it. Thanks so much for walking through this study with me. I hope it's been helpful and encouraging. Hope you have a great rest of your class and a great rest of this week.